I felt I was a lamb to the slaughter. I knew it, and I couldn't do anything about it. Diana said those words on tape, not in anger, not with tears in her voice, with a stillness that is almost harder to hear than crying. A 20-year-old woman, the night before the most watched wedding in human history, sitting in a room at Clarence House with her sister Jane, knowing something the 750 million people waiting for her couldn't know, that the fairy tale was already over before it began. But here is the part of that night that nobody tells you in full, because something else happened the night before the wedding. Something small. Something that arrived at Clarence House in a velvet box, with a card tucked inside, in Charles's own handwriting. A signet ring, gold, engraved with the Prince of Wales feathers, and a note that said, "I'm so proud of you, and when you come up, I'll be there at the altar for you tomorrow. Just look 'em in the eye and knock 'em dead." She read it. She held the ring. She put it down, and the next morning, when she put on the dress and the tiara and the 25-foot train, and walked out into a London summer that had turned itself inside out with joy for her, she left the ring behind, not by accident, not in the rush of a morning that had 100 moving parts and 1,000 people waiting on her. She left it behind the way you leave something behind when you have made a quiet, private decision that nobody around you is going to understand. That's the story. Not the ring itself, not even the letter. The decision she made in that room before the world came to collect her. The decision to walk down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral and say the words and wear the dress, and leave the one thing that was supposed to be personal, private, his, sitting alone on a dressing table in Clarence House. This is that story. Everything you're about to hear comes from Diana's own recorded voice, the secret tapes she made for Andrew Morton in 1991 and 1992, released publicly after her death. From Penny Junor's biography, The Duchess, The Untold Story. From Paul Burrell's testimony and his accounts to the press. From the words of Diana's astrologer Penny Thornton, who spoke about what else Charles told Diana on that same night. From the documented record of who Diana was on that morning, and what she was carrying when she walked through those cathedral doors. Where accounts conflict, I'll tell you. Nothing here is guesswork. Before we go any further, if this channel has ever given you a Diana you hadn't seen before, take 1 second and subscribe. This one earns it. Let's go back. Not to Clarence House, further back than that, because to understand why Diana left that ring behind, you have to understand what the weeks before the wedding had already done to her. By the time the ring arrived at Clarence House, Diana had already been through things that the public celebrating outside had no idea about. 3 weeks before the wedding, she had sat across a lunch table from her sisters, Sarah and Jane, and told them she couldn't do it, that she wanted out, that the whole thing was unbelievable. She said it on the Morton tapes. "I went upstairs, had lunch with my sisters who were there, and I said, I can't marry him. I can't do this. This is absolutely unbelievable." Her sisters didn't tell her to follow her instincts. They didn't tell her to trust what she was feeling. They told her what the situation already was. Her face was on the tea towels. She was too late to pull out. Bad luck, Dutch. So she had gone back to Buckingham Palace and continued with the preparations, and somewhere in those final weeks, she had found the parcel. She described it herself, on the Morton tapes, with a specificity that only belongs to memories that have been turned over and over in the dark for years. She had walked into an office belonging to Michael Colborne, a member of Charles's staff. There was a parcel sitting on a desk. She already knew what it was, because someone had let it slip. A bracelet Charles had had it made, gold chain, blue enamel disc, and on that disc 2 entwined letters, G and F, Gladys and Fred. The private nicknames Charles and Camilla used for each other. He was sending a farewell gift to the woman he loved, days before his wedding to someone else. Not through a courier, not anonymously. He sent it personally. He insisted on giving it to Camilla face to face. Diana's words on the tape, "I opened it, and there was the bracelet. And I said, I know where this is going, and I was devastated." She went to her sisters. She tried to get out. She was told it was too late, and then she came back, and she kept going, and the machinery of the century's most famous wedding carried on around her, and without her, really, because the woman inside all of it was already somewhere else, entirely. Then, there is one more thing. The thing that Diana's close friend and astrologer Penny Thornton disclosed in an ITV documentary years later. Something she said Diana had told her. About what Charles said to Diana, that same night before the wedding. The night of the ring. The night of the note. That same night, Thornton said, "One of the most shocking things that Diana told me was that the night before the wedding, Charles told her that he didn't love her. Think about what that means. Charles sent a ring, he sent a note. He told her he was proud of her, and he'd be there at the altar. And then, on the same night, according to Thornton, he told his bride that he did not love her. Thornton's explanation: I think Charles didn't want to go into the wedding on a false premise. He wanted to square it with her. Squaring it. That's one word for it. Diana, according to Thornton, was devastated. She thought about not going through with it. She lay in Clarence's house that night, with both things in her hands at once. The ring that said "I'm so proud of you," and the admission that made a mockery of it. She kept both things. She went to sleep. And in the morning, she left one of them behind. Let's be precise about the ring, because the precision matters. A signet ring is not an ordinary piece of jewelry. It is not a gift you give because you want to. It is a statement of lineage, of identity, of belonging. Signet rings bear crests. They bear coats of arms. Historically, they were used as a wax seal pressed into hot wax to authenticate documents. The signet ring is a signature. It says, "This is who I am, and this is who you are now connected to." The ring Charles sent Diana bore the Prince of Wales feathers, the same crest that Charles himself wore on his own signet ring, the ring that had been given to him by Queen Elizabeth II when he took on the title, the crest that bore the words Ish Dien, I serve, which means the ring he sent Diana the night before the wedding was not a romantic gesture in the ordinary sense. It was an official one. It was Charles saying, "You are entering this title with me. You are now part of this lineage. You carry these feathers. You serve too." Penny Junor, in The Duchess, The Untold Story, wrote about it plainly. It was the ring bearing the Prince of Wales feathers, sent with a note, the night Diana spent at Clarence's house with her sister Jane. Diana confirmed it herself in the Morton recordings. "He sent me a very nice signet ring the night before to Clarence's house, with the Prince of Wales feathers on, and a very nice card that said, 'I'm so proud of you, and when you come up I'll be there at the altar for you tomorrow. Just look him in the eye and knock him dead.'" She called it a very nice ring. She called it a very nice card. Listen to those words, very nice, and hear what's in them. Not beautiful. Not moving. Not the most wonderful thing I've ever received. Very nice. The phrase of a woman describing something that sits at an angle to what she actually feels. Andrew Morton wrote about the ring and what it landed next to. He wrote that the note helped soothe Diana's misgivings, but only partially, because next to the note and the ring, the inner turmoil that had been building for months could not be fully quieted. Diana told Morton directly, "The night before the wedding I was very calm, deathly calm. I felt I was the lamb to the slaughter. I knew it, and I couldn't do anything about it. Deathly calm." That's not the calm of someone at peace with their decision. That's the calm of someone who has made a decision they cannot reverse and has found, on the other side of the terror, a kind of emptiness. The storm has passed not because the sea is safe, but because there is nothing left to fight with. She had the ring. She had the note. She had her sister Jane asleep down the corridor. She had the dress, already laid out for the morning, the David and Elizabeth Emanuel creation with the 25-foot silk train, creased from being packed into the carriage, a detail that would panic every dressmaker in the world on the morning of the wedding. She had the Spencer tiara, borrowed from her family. She had the Welsh gold wedding band made from the same nugget that had supplied royal wedding rings for decades. She had bulimia, which had flared badly that night. She said it herself on the tapes. "I had a very bad fit of the night before." She had all of that. And she had a ring in a box that told her, officially and in gold, whose world she was entering. And in the morning she left it on the dressing table. July 29th, 1981. Clarence's house. Early. The house is already full of people. Hairdressers. Dressers. The Emanuel team, panicking about the train. Ladies in waiting. Staff who have been managing royal ceremonies for decades moving through the rooms with the calm precision of people who do not allow for panic. Diana is getting ready in the middle of all of it. She would describe the morning later in a way that tells you everything about how far inside herself she had gone. She described it as calm, the same word she used for the night before, deathly calm. A woman moving through the preparations for the biggest day of her life, as though she were watching herself from somewhere slightly above. Nobody around her knew what she had been told the night before. Nobody knew what was sitting on the dressing table at Clarence's house, the ring in its box, left behind. Nobody knew that she had spent months knowing about the bracelet with the G and F on it, and had gone to her sister's and been told it was too late, and had come back and kept going and kept going and kept going. The dress went on. 45 seconds to button it. the train attached, the tiara positioned, the glass slipper shoes with the C and D stitched inside, his initial and hers, intertwined, slipped onto her feet, the engagement ring on her left hand, the Welsh gold wedding band ready to be placed beside it, and the signet ring, bearing the Prince of Wales feathers, not on her finger. She got into the carriage. She rode through London streets lined with crowds that stretched further than any eye could see. 1 million people in the city that day, 750 million watching on TV screens around the world, all of them waiting for the woman in the glass coach to step out and be the princess they had been promised. Inside the carriage, Diana was somewhere else entirely. She said it on the Morton tapes. She said it in a voice that is almost impossible to listen to without feeling it physically. I was very, very calm, deathly calm. I felt I was a lamb to the slaughter. And then she walked into St. Paul's Cathedral. And something happened on that walk, something documented, on the record, in Morton's own account, that tells you who Diana was even inside the worst morning of her life. She was scanning the pews, not for friendly faces, not for her family. For one face in particular, she was looking for Camilla. Morton describes it. As Diana walked down that aisle, she spotted Camilla Parker Bowles in the congregation, and she thought to herself, in her own words, in her own voice on those tapes, I hope all that's over now. She was walking toward the altar, toward the man who had told her the night before that he didn't love her, and she was hoping, still hoping, that the thing with Camilla was finished, that the bracelet with the G and F was the last chapter of that story and not the first chapter of the next one. That the ring he'd sent her, the signet ring sitting on a dressing table in Clarence House, was the beginning of something real. She hoped, and the world watched her smile. Here is where honesty matters, because this channel was built on it. Did Diana leave the ring behind as a conscious act of protest? The documentary record doesn't go that far. What it says is that she didn't wear it. What it says is that the ring was later spotted on her finger at a private photo shoot at Kensington Palace in 1983 and at a polo match in 1988. She wore it eventually, in private, quiet moments, not on her wedding day. The reasons, as documented, point toward the same place. Andrew Morton wrote that the note helped soothe her misgivings, but couldn't fully quiet the turmoil that had been building for months. The ring was a symbol of what she was entering, an institution, a title, a lineage, at the very moment when everything about that institution had given her reason to doubt it. She was 20 years old. She had met Charles 13 times before the engagement was announced. She had been told he didn't love her. She had found the bracelet for Camilla. She had tried to escape 3 weeks earlier and been told her face was on the tea towels. The ring sat in its box on the morning of the wedding, and she left it there. Paul Burrell, who knew her longer and closer than almost anyone, described what it was like to watch Diana send romantic notes to Charles across their marriage, notes that went unreturned, unreciprocated. He said it plainly to Marie Claire. It's such a sad thing to say that he never loved her, and so he never returned the compliment. He wasn't romantic. He tried to be. But he didn't have a romantic bone in his body. He tried. The ring was him trying. Just look him in the eye and knock him dead. Not the words of a man writing to a woman he loved. The words of a man coaching a nervous colleague through a difficult appearance. Warm, in a way. Supportive, in a way. But not love. Not even close to love. And Diana, at 20, already knew the difference, even if she couldn't articulate it yet. She was at Clarence House, holding a ring that said you are now part of my lineage, and a card that said knock 'em dead, and the memory of a man telling her he didn't love her. And the next morning she put on the dress, and she left the ring where it was. She walked down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral, 600 guests seated on either side. The music soaring, the cameras recording everything for the 750 million who were watching. She spotted Camilla in the pews. She thought, I hope all that's over now. She reached the altar. Charles was there, just as he'd promised in the card. I'll be there at the altar for you tomorrow. He was there, in his naval uniform, standing straight, waiting. She looked at him, and later she told Morton something that breaks your heart if you let it. She said, I remember being so in love with my husband that I couldn't take my eyes off him. I just absolutely thought I was the luckiest girl in the world. He was going to look after me. And then the pause that carries all of it. Well, was I wrong on that assumption? She said the words. She got the ring on her finger. The Welsh gold band alongside the sapphire. The institution satisfied. The fairy tale complete. The signet ring was at Clarence House, alone in its box. bearing the feathers of a prince who had told his bride he didn't love her, and then coached her through the morning like a difficult engagement. Diana wore it later, privately. At a photo shoot in 1983, at a polo match in 1988. She never threw it away. She never gave it back. She kept it the way you keep things that are complicated, not close to you, but not gone either. The wedding was over, the carriage ride back to Buckingham Palace. The balcony kiss, the crowds that stretched from the Mall to the horizon and beyond, and then the honeymoon, the royal yacht Britannia, cruising the Mediterranean. 2 weeks at sea. The part of the story where, by every convention of every fairy tale ever told, the hard part was supposed to be finished. Diana was on that yacht with the man she had just married, in the most photographed dress in history, and within days she was crying her heart out. She said it herself, on the Morton tapes, in the same flat voice she used for all the truths that cost her something to say. I had tremendous hope, but it was slashed by day 2. Day 2, not after months, not after the first argument, or the first cold winter in a draughty palace, or the first realization that royal life was not what the postcards suggested. Day 2 of the honeymoon, before they had barely left the harbour, because on that yacht, early in the cruise, Diana opened her husband's diary. She did it innocently, checking a date, reaching for something ordinary, and out of the diary fell photographs of Camilla, on their honeymoon. In his private diary, close enough to touch. She confronted him. It was managed, the way things were always managed, smoothed over, an explanation offered. Diana swallowed it, the way she swallowed everything in those first years, because what else was there to do on a yacht in the middle of the Mediterranean 2 days into a marriage that 750 million people had watched begin? And then there was the dinner, the formal dinner the Britannia hosted for Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and his wife during the cruise. Diana sat at the table and looked at her husband's wrists. He was wearing cufflinks she hadn't seen before. Gold, new. She looked more closely. 2 entwined letters, 2 C's, not Charles and Diana, Charles and Camilla. She asked him. He admitted it. A gift from Camilla, worn on their honeymoon, at a state dinner, with his new wife sitting 3 feet away. Diana's words on the tape. So I said, Camilla gave you those, didn't she? He said, yes, so what's wrong? They're a present from a friend, and boy, did we have a row. Jealousy, total jealousy. She called it jealousy. The institution would have called it jealousy too. The courtiers, the biographers who sided with Charles, the palace machinery that spent years quietly suggesting Diana was unstable, emotional, impossible to manage. They would have called it jealousy and left it there. But here is what jealousy actually looks like, stripped of that word. A 20-year-old woman who had found a farewell bracelet for another woman 2 weeks before her wedding, who had been told by her husband the night before the ceremony that he didn't love her, who had walked down the aisle searching the pews for a rival's face, who had left a signet ring in a box at Clarence House because she already understood, at some level she couldn't yet articulate, that something was wrong. That woman was now on a yacht in the Mediterranean, looking at her husband's cufflinks, at 2 C's that weren't hers. That's not jealousy. That's confirmation. She cried on the honeymoon. She said so. I remember crying my heart out. She had hope, she said that too, clearly, without pretending otherwise. Tremendous hope. But it had been slashed by day 2. The ring was at Clarence House. The cufflinks were on his wrists. And Diana was somewhere in the Mediterranean, learning faster than any young bride should have to learn, exactly what kind of marriage she had walked into. Leave her at Clarence House. The night of July 28, 1981. The house is quiet. Jane is asleep down the corridor. Tomorrow is already arriving. In a few hours the dressers will come, and the photographers, and the machinery that turns a woman into a spectacle will begin its work. She's sitting somewhere in that house. The ring is in front of her. The card beside it. I'm so proud of you. She knows what she knows. She knows about the bracelet. She knows what Charles said tonight. She knows what her sisters said 3 weeks ago. She knows that in the morning there will be a carriage and a cathedral and 750 million people who are not going to understand any of this. She picks the ring up. She looks at the feathers engraved on it. Ish Din, I serve. She puts it down, not in fury, not in a gesture of rebellion, quietly. The way you put something down when you have decided, without announcement, that you are going to cross the threshold on your own terms, wearing what belongs to you, carrying what is yours. Leaving behind the thing that belongs to a story you already know doesn't have the ending they're selling. She wore the Spencer tiara tomorrow. Her family's not his. She chose shoes from a cobbler, not the palace. She put C and D on the soles, his initial and hers, where only she could see it, small choices. Private ones. In a day that belonged to everyone else, the tiny things she kept for herself. The ring stayed behind. In the morning, the carriage came. The dress went on. The 25-foot train attached. The tiara pinned. The Spencer family jewels at her throat. And a gold signet ring with the Prince of Wales feathers, sitting in a box on a dressing table in an empty room in Clarence House, while the most watched woman in the world rode through London toward a cathedral, toward an altar, toward a future she already knew would cost her everything. She still hoped. That's the thing. She spotted Camilla in the pews, and she still hoped it was finished. She looked at Charles at the altar, and she still thought, he is going to look after me. She hoped all the way up that aisle, and she left the ring behind. Thank you for staying with me through this one. The ring is the detail that everyone overlooks. The letter gets quoted, just look 'em in the eye, and the image is sweet, or tries to be. But the ring is the truth of it, because it's not what Charles sent that matters. It's what Diana chose not to carry with her. She was 20 years old, and she had already figured out, somewhere quiet and private and unreachable by the cameras, that she was going to walk into this marriage on her own terms or not at all. She couldn't stop the wedding, but she could leave the ring behind. And she did. That is Diana, not the girl in the fairy tale. The woman who knew it wasn't one, and showed up anyway, and kept one small thing for herself. That's the story that's worth remembering.